Stan, one of the things I think our former world is missing, I think a lot of times when they describe deconstruction, I don't necessarily think they're wrong. The way they describe it, I have different feelings about it. I go, you're describing it right, but I don't disagree with you, but about what faith deconstruction is, I'm just there. But one of the things I think they're missing is something deeply theological, which I don't get. Here's what I mean. When asked why people deconstruct, they might say it's church trauma, and it would certainly include that. Clergy abuse, which would include that. Ecclesiastic extravagance, megachurches, or the narcissistic pastor. They're not necessarily wrong at that. But in their defense or apologetic, it seems to be, they never turn it on their own theology. Meaning, the reason some people are deconstructing, a lot of people are deconstructing, because the actual theological constructs that we call the truth or historic orthodoxy is no longer making sense to anybody. That's the thing I think the apologists are missing. And then they double down on the orthodoxy.
I think one of the hard things in that is I don't know any of my evangelical apologist friends, and I have them, who haven't in their own way done some measure of deconstruction.
How so?
Many of them have moved from fundamentalism, extreme fundamentalism, to a more moderate evangelical position. Everybody gets to deconstruct as far as they feel comfortable with, and everyone understands themselves to be the moderate between the extremes. I mean, conservative is anybody right of me, and liberal is anybody left of me, and that there's a narcissism in that for all of us. But when I look at my life, deconstruction, I was born and raised an apostolic Pentecostal in the denomination, the United Pentecostal Church. Now, that is a group of Pentecostals who broke off from mainline Pentecostalism, if I could use that phrase, in 1915, because our people, my ancestors, received a revelation about the Godhead. And we don't have to get into the weeds with all of that. The long and short of it is, my group, the United Pentecostal Church, Oneness Pentecostal people, that denomination was founded in 1945, believed even Assembly of God, Church of God, Pentecostal Holiness, Foursquare, other Pentecostal denominations were lost. My deconstruction began as a 10 or 11-year-old boy, not trying to sort through, deep apologetics. I was trying to wrestle with Uncle Bud and Uncle Junior and Aunt Charlotte and Aunt Barbara, these good Church of God, Assembly of God people who, by our estimation, our family was very divided. These people were going to hell. I stretched as far as I could between 11 and 13 years old, and my heart and mind widened to where I could accept that Assembly of God, Church of God people who also spoke in tongues may be included in the bride of Christ. I lived there a while, and before too long, I began to have the same sensibilities and angst about Billy Graham and Max Lucado and Chuck Swindoll, evangelical people who didn't speak with tongues.
Meaning you started to go,
how are they going to hell?
Yeah, these good people. Billy Graham, come on, how was he right? Sure.
I stretched as far as I could.
Yeah.
And I moved from Pentecostalism through the charismatics to the evangelicals, and then I began to read moderate evangelicals like Campolo and Yancey.
Sure.
And I stretched as far as I could. It was always a stretching. Now, here's something interesting. Every group I left said my stretching was backsliding. Every group I came to said my stretching was growth.
Of course. So your point is, this stretching
Everybody does it.
Yeah, right. And you go to the point where
You're comfortable.
yeah, right.
And then you make that sacrosanct and impose that same measure on every other person.
Yeah, right. And so you think this is a lot of what's obviously going on as the current stream of American evangelicalism, how it's reacting to kind of this faith-shifting, evolving, faith deconstructing phenomena that we see.
There's no way around the fact that for 2,000 years, Christianity at a cellular level is very much inculcated with fear about the afterlife. And the afterlife is generally vouchsafed for us by proper belief. Not by works, but by believing the right thing. We have, for 2,000 years, there has been a heavy onus on believing the right thing. Believing the right or wrong thing is the difference between burning forever and living in celestial paradise. That burden on believing is something we do carry, again, at a cellular level. So anytime we're stretching in our beliefs, there's always this undergirding trepidation that I could get too far out there and my relationship with God could be jeopardized by crossing the line. I've journeyed with many groups upstream in this deconstruction flow. Every group goes as far as they can, and if you leave them, there's always this at least tacit acknowledgement that, hey, we were doing fine, but the phrase is always, either stated or unstated, the phrase is, you've gone too far.
Yeah. You know, I think this could even be with evangelical moral absolutism. Certainly when you and I were evangelicals, we did believe there was a moral standard and a moral absolutism. I certainly held that and preached that. But yet when we're intellectually honest about it, kind of using your point towards morality, the history of the Christian church has always been evolving its morality. It's always changing. Have you read, are you familiar with the book Moral Combat by Marie Griffith?
You've talked to me about it before, and it's on my reading list because of you.
Yeah, and basically, she only covers the 20th century, maybe a little post-Civil War and slavery, but basically her thesis is how American evangelicalism was always late to the party on things that everybody eventually agreed was a good morality, whether it was slavery, women's suffrage, black voting, birth control. Certainly by the time you get to civil rights in the 60s, interracial marriage, feminism in the 70s, and now, of course, dealing with LGBTQIA plus in the 90s till now. And, you know, it's kind of like even a conservative evangelical, what sane conservative evangelical would stand in any pulpit in the United States and say a person with a Chinese background should not marry someone with a Caucasian background? No sane conservative evangelical minister would teach that today. Yet in the 1960s, that could have easily been done on interracial marriage. So my point is, morality, you're stretching, we're constantly changing and evolving and stretching, no?
And we, of course, are. The insufferable thing about much of Christianity is first that it often is slow to the party. Often other pillars of society, whether that's geopolitical pillars, healthcare, education, the arts, they are often ahead of the game. I wish that weren't the case. I mean, we've always kind of thought that the longest leg of the stool was the church, the religious institution, but it's not true. We often come kicking and screaming to these recognitions. That's not the most insufferable part. And I'm not trying to be caustic here. The insufferable part is that when we finally do capitulate, give in, get painted into the corner, we act like we led the way.